Last year, the Chicago Bulls were one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference up until the second half of the year when they ran into some injury troubles and fell all the way down to the 6th seed and were eliminated easily in the first round of the playoffs by the Milwaukee Bucks. And while every team does struggle with injuries, I think the Bulls definitely got hit by them a little bit harder than most teams last year going into the second half of the season, and I still think this is definitely an elite team. I had the extremely hot take in my Eastern Conference standings predictions video of predicting the Bulls would finish number 2 in the Eastern Conference in this upcoming season. I've just learned that with standings predictions at the start of the season, you don't know what can happen. Who would have predicted last year that Memphis Grizzlies would be the 2 seed? Who would have predicted the Nets would be the 7 seed? And my hot take is that the Bulls will be a top 2 team in the Eastern Conference in the regular season, and today I'm going to explain why I think they're going to shock the NBA and be one of the elite teams and potentially one of the championship contenders. So let's get into the analysis. So I'm going to break down this Bulls team's offense going into this season and also their defense. So let's start with their offense first. Last year, this was definitely the big strength of the Bulls, and it's the reason that they were considered one of the top teams in the East at one point in the season. Of course, it all starts with their two main primary scorers in DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine, who last year fit together really well, developed some great chemistry together. Despite them having similar play styles, LaVine was able to play off the ball a lot of the time, and sometimes DeMar was able to do that too, and LaVine especially really just fit into their kind of offensive system really well, and DeMar was able to really be most of the time the main focal point of the team. And they're also surrounded by a great supporting cast offensively. They've got a guy like Nikola Vucevic, who overall had a bit of a down year last season, but still did a good job fitting into his role, running the pick and pop a lot of the time. And I'm going to explain a little bit later on as well why I think he's actually going to have a much better year this season. That could be really key for the Bulls. They've got some great playmakers alongside them, like Lonzo Ball, Ayo Dosunmu, who really showed a lot of promise last year as a rookie, and I think he's probably going to break out this season as well. A guy like Kobe White, who shoots the 3 well. He's also a pretty good overall playmaker. And then you've got a guy this season coming back for the whole year in Patrick Williams, who can be a defensive specialist. They signed Andre Drummond, who can definitely provide some value as a traditional big man, play down low, get some easy buckets, and clean up the glass, get some rebounds offensively, and put them home. And overall, this is looking like a very well-rounded offense that does a good job of a lot of different things. So let's focus back though on those two main scorers for this team, because these are the real keys for this team and the reason that they're going to have an elite offense. These guys both last year had incredible years. DeMar averaging almost 28 points per game on 59% true shooting, which is well above league average for last season, and a 50.5 field goal percentage, which is absolutely insane. Of course, he's the mid-range killer and also improved his three-point shot a lot, shooting about 35% from the field, which is one of the best of his career. And then we look at LaVine, who has consistently in his career been around and been on the cusp of being a 50-40-90 scorer, and last year he showed that again. I think he's a very underrated player in this league, definitely deserves to be considered top 20. He's a very efficient overall scorer who can be electric around the rim and shoot the 3 very efficiently as well, and in the mid-range area. He's basically your typical 3-level scorer, except he just doesn't have the ball in his hands that much. He's a lot of the time an off-ball player, with especially a guy like DeMar on the team. And overall for him last season, he averaged about 24.5 points per game, which is up there with some of the best in the league as well. He shot about 47.5% from the field, and overall 60.5% true shooting, and 39% from 3. So a very impressive year for both of them. And then you've got their third best overall player, at least in my opinion, in Vucevic, who definitely had a bit of a down year last season. Of course, his entire game evolves around kind of the pick and pop, but he shot only 31.5% from 3 last year, which is one of the worst of his career ever since he's consistently started shooting 3s. And even though he's been known for being one of the best in the league as a roll man and kind of that pick and pop, towards the end of the year, teams were actually leaving him open from that spot at the top of the key shooting that 3, and I think his confidence also started to diminish as well as the season went on. But The truth is that throughout Vucevic's career, his three-point percentages season to season have actually been quite inconsistent, and I think last year he was just trying to fit into a role. He fit into his role quite easily, but I think he was almost trying a little too hard to prove himself on this Bulls team, and you know that that's the main part of his game, is that pick and pop, and he's going to be putting a lot of work into it in the offseason. And what we've seen throughout his career of him being kind of an inconsistent three-point shooter, having a good year and then a bad year, I think he can have a good year this year again, and also get used to playing in the post a little bit more, because he can allow a lot of mismatches when he's down low against a lot of opposing defenders. We saw that actually a lot last year. He was still able to average 17.5 points per game on over 47% from the field, so I think he can get back to that, still be one of the best rebounders in the league, and also continue to improve defensively. And then, like I mentioned, for this Bulls team, offensively as a whole, they have great depth, they have great playmakers, and they signed a guy in Andre Drummond who I think will complement this offense as well and get a few minutes off of the bench for them and provide some energy really on both ends of the floor, but especially offensively, what he can do getting all those offensive boards. Overall, as a team for the Bulls offense last season, they only ranked 13th, to just above middle of the pack in actual offensive rating, but they really stood out in a lot of categories. For example, they ranked 4th in the regular season in three-point percentage as an overall team, 5th in the league in mid-range percentage as an overall team, and 2nd in the league in points per possession in transition. And now that this kind of new team with kind of a new franchise player in DeMar DeRozan coming in, and new special playmakers like Lonzo coming in, and just overall just a new team, they're able to have a full year together under their belts, and now they know kind of what they specialize in. They're going to try to get out and transition more this year. They're going to be shooting more threes this year because everyone on that team, or pretty much close to everyone, can shoot it at a pretty high level. So now that this team knows what they're good at, they've had a year under their belt, I think you could see them explode offensively this season. Plus, they're probably going to stay more healthy as a team because they just had a really big problem with injuries last season. And speaking about these injury problems, the Bulls suffered from these problems defensively more than anything else, and the stats definitely back that up as well. I mean, even going into last year, I thought the Bulls would be a bad defensive team, and that's why they wouldn't be up there with some of the elite in the league. But in the first half of last season, their defense was good for many different reasons, but then they had a couple of big injuries to two main guys, Lonzo Ball and Alex Caruso, who are both turning into some of the better perimeter defenders in the NBA. Lonzo is just very quick, he has good hands, and he's actually been a pretty versatile defender too. He can guard the perimeter, but he can pretty much guard 1 through 4, which is a pretty impressive ability. And Caruso is pretty much the same way, but honestly even better. He oftentimes matches up against the other team's best player. He's an absolute pest, is always up there in the league lead or near the league lead in steals per game, and he is also a great overall perimeter defender and also pretty versatile. I mean, pretty much both of them are great defenders that play pretty much the same play style or close to it defensively. And most of the time, a team suffers drastically defensively when they lose their interior defender, their defensive anchor. For example, the Jazz are going to suffer this year because Rudy Gobert's not there. He's their main rim protector. But the Bulls really suffered because both Lonzo and Caruso, I mean, perimeter defense isn't as important as interior defense, but they provide so much more than just that defensively, and the fact that both of them missed a lot of time had a big effect in a negative way on this team. There was one point near the middle of the season last year where the Bulls were actually top 10 in the NBA in defensive rating. It was really working out for them on that end of the floor. They had a lot of things going, and then both Lonzo and Caruso started to run into injury problems, and they finished the season with the 23rd ranked defense in the NBA. And when we look at some further stats as well, last year when Lonzo Ball was playing for this team, in the games that he was able to make and actually play, the Bulls had a defensive rating as a team of about 110.5, and without him, their defensive rating was about 117.5, a 7-point difference per game when Lonzo is in or out of the game. And it's the same thing with Caruso. Their defensive rating with him in games that he played was about 111, and without him was again about 117.3. So it's really clear the effect that these guys have on this team, and both of them only played about a half season last year, with Caruso only being able to get into exactly half of the games, only 41, and Lonzo even less than that, only 35 games. Not to mention that their young developing player in Patrick Williams, who's also going to develop into a great defensive player. We might not exactly see that this year, but people have compared him to Kawhi because of his defense before, and he also had a big injury that kept him out pretty much all of last year and was only able to play 17 games at the end of last season. So you got 41, 35, and 17 games from your 3 best defenders on your team. And now all of these guys are healthy, and obviously there's always going to be injury problems, but I'm sure this is not going to happen again this season. You're going to get more than 41, 35, and 17 games from these 3 guys that are turning into elite defenders in today's game and are going to be able to provide a lot for your team. And it's already been shown with Lonzo and Caruso how when they're on the floor, the Bulls can be an above average defensive team. So if this team can stay relatively healthy and pretty much just have the average amount of injuries that any other team in the NBA has, I think they're going to be set on really both ends of the floor, and they're going to see immense success this year. So there you have it. That's all I've got for you guys in today's video. Those are my thoughts on the Chicago Bulls and why I have the hot take that in the regular season they're going to be a top 3 team in the East and potentially a championship contender in 2022 and 2023. Thank you guys for watching today's video. If you're new, be sure to subscribe, comment down below your thoughts on the Bulls going into this season, and I'll see you all in the next video.